And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I'm your host, Wes Tankersley. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have a great guest with us. His name is Christopherson. He's got quite a story, and I want to share that with you and hope that it will help you to find a way to be successful. Curtis, thanks for hanging out with me today. I appreciate you showing up, man.
Yeah, no problem, Wes.
Hey, so you kind of have like a fitness business and in a bunch of other things, and our show is really about entrepreneurs and how they create their success, because I think that it's pretty scary to get out there and put yourself out there. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, what you do, how you kind of started what you have now?
Yeah, for sure. So born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. Stayed here all my life. I played a high-level sport growing up. In fact, I played a lot of sports growing up. And then I excelled at water polo. I represented Canada and our nation in water polo. Went around the world, went to world championships, Pan American Games, pretty much everything but the Olympics. Hung up my swimsuit, as they say. And during that time, I went to university for kinesiology and for sport as well. And as I finished off my education in kinesiology, I decided to start training people in like personal training people in a very desirable postal code or zip code, and realized that, what I thought was going to be a stepping stone in my career ended up being the last 20 years. So, in short, for the last 20 years, I've built a high-end brick and mortar physical personal training business. We have 14 locations. We have partnerships with the W Hotel and the Ritz-Carlton, so you can see what the level of service that we deliver. It's very similar to like an Equinox, but only about 6,000 square feet. So I've been doing that for the last 20 years. And then prior to the pandemic, I started developing my own platform and software solution so we could connect consumers around the world for that same experience. And that got accelerated over COVID. And now I have two businesses, a physical brick and mortar business in the personal training space, as well as a digital platform called Workout.
And we'll talk. I want to talk about that a little bit, but I have a couple questions about, Canada and the way that personal trainers have, because in America, in the States, I'm sorry, we're all in America, in the United States, you can go take a couple classes and you can be a personal trainer. Like it's like an hour thing. But you went into kinesiology, which my background is kinesiology as well, because I was a PE teacher. But being a trainer, is it required to do that to have a kinesiology degree, or is it the same thing? Like your trainers can go just take classes and be certified?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So the barrier to entry is quite low. Obviously people that have a kinesiology degree or human kinetics degree are a little bit more advanced in terms of their education and learning. That being said, there's weekend courses, there's 6-week, 8-week courses that allow people to be certified in some level of personal training or group fitness training.
So if you were to do it again, because one of the big things that I think a lot of people are lost on is the fact that it's always, hey, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. You got to go to college to be successful in whatever you do. If you were to do it again, I understand from going from college that kinesiology would definitely help you know more about the body, more about what you're trying to do in all those situations. But is it possible to get into what you're doing without that degree as well?
For sure. I mean, I think if I look back, I was ready to go to university. A lot of people aren't. I see it over the last 20 years. I've probably employed over 1,000, well, for sure over 1,000, probably over 5,000 employees. And, you realize that people have gone to school and gone to university for the sake of going to university. They think that's the next step. So they graduate from high school, they might travel for a little bit, and they feel like the next route is going to university and getting a degree. And the challenge with that is that, individuals are embarking on a, educational path, whether it's kinesiology, psychology, whatever, biology, and they don't actually know what they want to do and they don't know who they are. So, for me, I would say that whether it's myself, like I look back and I probably wouldn't change a thing. That being said, I'm not one of those ones that are pro, go get a degree for the sake of getting a degree. I don't think it's necessary. I think some people would benefit from going to get the weekend in our industry, go get the weekend course, go get the 6-week, 8-week course, cut your teeth, determine if you actually like that as a career path, both the industry or personal training as a practice, and then determine if you want to go back to school. Like, get some experience under your belt to determine if this is what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think that that's an interesting take on it, because I don't think that many people, a lot of times they'll just go. And here in the U.S., it's like you go to college, and I did this myself, so it's kind of the same thing. Like, I'm going to college to be one thing, and then I find out that I'm not going to do it. It's too hard. Then you change your major. Then you end up, the education system in Canada might be a little bit different here. Do you actually have, like, when you go to university, do you have to pay for it, or is there scholarships and things like that, or is it pretty similar to what the U.S. education system?
Oh, yeah, it's identical. I mean, there's a mixture of scholarships and fully paid. The pricing has gone up significantly in the last 20 years, so I don't even know what it's going for right now. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough that I had a variety of scholarships, both academic and athletic, and so I was kind of in that sweet spot that I was lucky enough that I lived at home, went to university, didn't live on campus, and kind of had the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and building that, I mean, it's definitely, that's one of the things I think that's a barrier. So I think that it's a great thing to say that, you can definitely do this without having a degree. But I think one of the things that most people don't realize is that even though you don't have a degree, you're always trying to learn, right? There's always something different. There's always something to build on. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I like I said, I mean, through my business career, I've been able to employ probably over 5,000 employees, and I think your attitude in anything is your attitude in everything. So whether you go to school or not, are you a lifelong learner? Do you invest in your knowledge? Do you invest in just like your health and wellness? Do you feel like, once you start a career path or a journey or a business, is that the start line or is that the finish line? And I think the reality is that there's so much to learn. I mean, the older I get, the more I realize how much I don't know. And, investing in time, energy, and education around, what you don't know, and expanding your knowledge base, I think is super important. So, for me, university, whether it's college, university, it's a container and a forum of encouraging, obviously, education and formalizing education, but education lives well beyond the four walls of a college or university dorm. So it's I think it's very important that if you want to aspire to be someone, whether that's a level of business success, which is defined differently by everybody, but if you aspire to be someone or be like someone or become someone, that means that you're aspiring to be better. And, for me, are you putting the time, energy, and effort to advance your, who you are as a person?
Yeah. And I think that that's great because people don't, it doesn't just happen. Like, you can be complacent for sure, but if you want to be better, you're going to always be learning. I mean, you've probably seen a tons of shifts over the last 20 years in fitness and in the industry that you're in. And so being able to punt, and the COVID was probably a great indicator of you being able to shift and do something different. If you can't have people inside your gym, you have to find a different way. Was that a tough transition for a while? Because I'm assuming that I don't know how it is in Canada right now, but we're back. We basically it's back to normal for the most part.
Yeah, it's back to normal now. I mean, don't talk to me about the last 2 years of the on off, and the shutdowns that you've had. I mean, it's been a ton. Going back to 2 years ago, so it was March of 2020. Was it a big shift? 100%. I mean, there couldn't be a bigger thing that could disrupt an industry. I mean, we're called personal training. When you take the person out of it, it's pretty difficult to apply and deliver the services that you're used to. And never did I think in my wildest thoughts or planning that, the government and the world would shut down and remove that interaction. So, it probably was the worst case. That being said, I think if you asked my circle of friends or the people that do business with me, I would say that they probably think that, some of the characteristics that I possess is that I'm very adaptable, very resourceful, and I definitely stay very optimistic. So, I think those characteristics I guess, bode well for me in that time. We pivoted extremely quickly. And I'll give you an example. On March 8th, I left Vancouver. I went to Toronto, and then I flew to Toronto to New York, New York to San Diego, San Diego to LA, LA to Seattle, and Seattle to Vancouver again. And so I was gone from March 8th to March 14th, I believe it was. And I was looking at expansion opportunities, and I signed a lease. I had an offer to purchase. And then I came back on March 15th to find out that a group of clients at one of our locations had got back from Austria for a ski trip, and they all tested positive for COVID. And so on March 16th, I decided to close our doors. We were all mandated. We ended up being mandated to close March 20th, but March 16th, we closed our doors, and yeah, we had to make a decision, like, what were we going to do? And in 15 weeks, we kind of shut everything down, and then we decided to pivot immediately on that Monday morning. And in 2 weeks' time, we were delivering the same high quality service digitally and virtually. And we deployed 250 trainers to do that, and delivered 17,000 virtual training sessions in the first 6 weeks on our own software. So, I mean, we closed our doors for like literally 2 weeks, retrained our entire staff, evolved our platform, and delivered services starting March 30th. And so it's anything is possible. It's just a matter of, do you hesitate? Are you resourceful? Do you, really evaluate and apply a business strategy? And are you willing to roll up your sleeves and get the job done? And I think that's, we're going to find times in life, whether it's going to be hard or difficult or challenges or, barriers. And we got to be willing to, to do the work. So
that's amazing, because just thinking about that, like being able to make that transition that quickly, you must have been through a few things that have made you just think, hey, you know what, this is not going to happen. This is not going to be something that I'm going to let stop me from moving forward. Because there's been so many people that I've interviewed over the pandemic that have been successful, but the big thing about it was they took, a month or two to try and figure out what they were going to do before they actually did it. They had to kind of wallow in that, what do I do?
Yeah.
This is taken away from me. What drove you to make that decision so quickly?
I like I said, I mean, maybe I possess some characteristics. Maybe some of my biggest strengths are being resourceful, adaptable. But that's how I've lived a lot of my life. Like, I take risk relatively easily, knowing that when you assess both best and worst case scenario, what is truly worst case scenario, and what do you have to lose half the time? I have physical accomplishments that probably have weighed into my ability to make decisions quickly. Whether it's, I've done a lot of adventures over my time. Like, it wasn't just the water polo career and the path of being on our national team and representing the country, but, I've done, I ran 150 miles in the Sahara Desert. Like, you got to make decisions, and, and I did that over 4 days, and I ran a coast to coast in Costa Rica. So it was 220 miles in 6 days. And so, when you're in those kind of environments, you have to be resourceful, and you have to, put in the work, and you have to get to the finish line. You don't really have a choice. Well, I guess you do, but so I think some of those experiences in life really shape me on how I make decisions in business and in life and with the kids, and yeah.
So talk about a little bit about, when you talk about resourcefulness, one of the things that I don't think that a lot of people realize is that they have to reach out to people. Do you have like any mentors or connections that you usually like bounce things off of and create, what you're doing? Or is it all
sure.
in here?
No, for sure. I mean, I'm not shy to say that, a lot of my experiences and a lot of my successes, I guess, or accomplishments have been, achievable just based on the fact that I've had, phenomenal people that I've surrounded myself with. And I think those ebb and flow as well. Like, the relationships I have today, and the quote unquote mentors that I have today are completely different than who they were 10 years ago. Because I think we, evolve as individuals and as people. And I think there's, if you're always that constant learner, you got to, you're going to end up evolving yourself and evolving your needs on who you need to be surrounded by. Now, I have long-term friendships for sure that are always reliable and dependable, and I've nurtured over the years. But yeah, I mean, I'm surrounded by phenomenal people, and some of them have been relationships that I've built through the business. Like, clients that I've trained for 15 years. I don't train myself anymore, but the business does, and yeah, relationships I've nurtured over the years for sure.
And as far as like you said you don't train much anymore, but I am assuming, because this is typically the way that it always ends up happening, but how do you train your employees to be better? Are you always looking to help them to succeed? Are you afraid that someone's going to try and take your job, or how do you train employees?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the reality is that when you want to scale business, it can't be, but you can't be. Everybody wants to be the main guy, right? Like everybody wants to do that. You get into business, you want to be the main guy half the time. Obviously, if you're driven by a level of financial success, you'd realize quickly that it can't be dependable on you, because that's not how you scale anything. And so is a little more challenging because our widget is people. I always say that I manage people that manage people that manage people that train people. Like it's that deep, right? So it's the dynamics and the relationships. So the biggest thing that I try to do in our business is lead with abundance, not lead with scarcity. Giving too much is never going to be a bad thing. If we've identified, onboarded, and hired the wrong person, that's on us. Right? If they leave and they don't possess the values or the morals that we align ourselves with, and they leave and they take our business, and there's some level of conflict on the way out, well, then we've done the poor job. We didn't identify this person as someone that really speaks to our value system. And if at the same token things evolve, and if we give people the tools, and the skills and experience to then go out and do it on their own, then, we're going to harness that too. And I think things have changed too. I mean, the reality is that the workforce has changed, expectations have changed, and overall, realities have changed. Like cost of living is going up. And so we're looking at evolving our business to support even more of that, knowing that, hey, guess what? Making $40,000 to $50,000 a year, but living in very highly desirable areas is not sustainable, especially if you have student debt and other unforeseen costs. So, we're looking at, adjusting and evolving our model so we have a grow and go system where, we're going to spend time, energy, effort to, support you, everything from the onboarding process all the way to nurturing your personal and professional growth in the first 24 to 36 weeks, all the way to, giving you the experience and the skills and the tools to be successful in this industry, and then giving you the pathway to be your own boss. Because we believe that if you do that, then you're gonna win on both sides. You're gonna win on attracting great quality people, and you're gonna win by retaining them. So
yeah, and I think that's a great leadership skill, being able to do the work and then being able to show other people that you're willing to help them grow, because the more people know around you, the more successful you're going to be anyway, because it helps to be able to delegate things and get other people involved and have them buy in because they feel like they have some ownership in the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you talked about you talked about your round trip that you took, pre-COVID, a little bit post or when COVID started. So the majority of your gyms, are they in Canada? It sounds like you're bouncing around getting leases in like the US too. Is that something that you plan on doing, or you were going to do and it just kind of didn't pan out because of the pandemic?
Yeah, we were obviously planning on doing it. It was, when you're signing leases in March of 2020, it was probably not ideal scenario timing. But yeah, we're going to be re-entering the market here shortly. So our plan is to expand down in the US. It just, freak timing that our plans and intentions to come down to the United States was, started in 2018, 2019, and then we were ready to execute 2020. And then, unfortunately the world got shut down. So, we're looking at picking up our bags and picking up where we left them and continuing on that journey. When, I don't know exactly. We're just, we've slowly come out of this relatively post-COVID world, and got to rejig as a company and organization. But overall, we're it's going to be in short order. Like it's not going to be. It'll probably be in 2022. So.
Well, and it's interesting too because I think that the COVID protocols in Canada were a little bit stricter than they were here. Correct? I mean, you guys were talk a little bit about that. The difference. I can tell you how it was here, but it seems as though every time I'm listening to a podcast and someone's from Canada, it was like there was way more lockdown. There was way more don't leave your house. There was way more you can't go out in public.
Yeah, depending on where you lived, we were lucky in Vancouver compared to Toronto, so the other side of the country. The rules and regulations and the lockdowns were a little bit more, I would say, severe in Toronto versus Vancouver. That being said, I think Canada was a little more restrictive than anywhere in the United States. For us, early on, obviously there was a heightened isolation and restrictions that were put in place. In 2020, there was some leniency or elevated restrictions throughout 2020, 2021, particularly in the summer times. And then when a new wave came in, they, decided to, lock down a little bit further. The hardest one was probably the last one, which was December 18th of what would be 2021, going into this year, 2022. December 18th, in Vancouver, they decided to lock down everybody and stay closed until January 22nd. And they shut down, for our industry, it was really tough because they shut down fitness, yet they left open restaurants, casinos, and other venues, sporting events. So you're telling me, I say this all the time, I could go to the casino in January 5th, the first week of January, the peak of our industry and business. I could go to the casino. I could sit at a poker table for 8 hours with, 10 strangers. I could smoke darts and drink beers, and that's smoking cigarettes. That is.
That was. I knew what you were talking about. I've never heard. I don't think I've heard anyone say it before, but that's cool.
Okay. And I could sit there, be unhealthy, and be around and surrounded by people with no plexiglass or any kind of, restrictions. And yet I couldn't go into a gym and work out with a trainer one-on-one. Like, come on, so that was a hard one for us. Time of the year, just overall, morale and outlook on everything. And I think, looking back, I don't question some of the decisions that were made early on. No one knew what was going on, and no one knew the severity, and no one knew the pathway forward. But I think as time went on, I think there was, some decisions that were made that I don't think were quite fair or reasonable.
Yeah. And you can't the big thing, I think a lot of it, and I don't like to talk too much about politics, but I think a lot of it is political. I think that if they really took one of the things that they talk about, fitness is something that is very important for people who are unhealthy to get into so that they don't suffer from the same symptoms that everyone else did. It's very beneficial, right? But they don't ever talk about that. They just talk about all the other things that happen. Getting sun is one thing that is good for COVID, and getting exercise is something that people need because it attacked originally the people who were out of shape and overweight or had those pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
So moving forward, what's the plan moving forward now to just keep expanding, to keep building? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Because obviously you're pushing forward every single day. You're not afraid to take that risk. You're not afraid to build something.
Yeah, it's so I've been very goal oriented all my life. I set annual plans, personal, professional. I have a vision board. I constantly revisit that, and I think for the first time in my life, what COVID taught me is that there are some things that are out of your control. You can't predict everything, and you can't control an outcome all the time. And for me, I went to this, actually, there's this book, it's called The Son of Hamas. I'll actually show the audience. And so I was lucky enough, so this gentleman, Musab Youssef, I saw him speak, and I've seen a ton of speakers. I've listened to a ton of podcasts, read hundreds of books. And this gentleman, he's probably one of the most wanted individuals in the world. So he was the son of a terrorist, the leader of a terrorist group called the Hamas. And this is a story I think is worth telling, by the way. And there was a private setting group. We were, in the room. There was security guards. There was, everybody was armed. Because, like I say, he is probably one of the most wanted individuals in the world.
So you were actually
went against,
in the same room as this guy?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so the son of Hamas, Mossab, he basically, Hamas is one of the biggest terrorist groups in the world, and his father was one of the founders and leaders of it, and he went pretty much, underground and went against the Hamas, like as a spy. And he's been able to survive and stay alive because of it. He's gone to jail several times. He's been tortured. And, the reason why I'm telling this story is at the end of it, so you're fascinated by his story. He's living abroad. He didn't disclose where he was. He obviously, has to live his life with, almost looking over his shoulder. One might think like he has a plan. He might be, I don't know, getting married, or he might make he might have a career, or what is he going to do next? And so someone in the audience, there's a group of 30 of us in this, very experienced, established entrepreneur, business professional, probably 70 years old. He stands up and he goes, so what does your future look like? Like, what does that look like? So very similar to what you just asked. Yeah. And he paused and he said, well, I've already lived it. And then he paused again, and you're like, and for most people in that room, I think it was probably over their head. And you sit there, and it was so powerful. And he said, our future is shaped by our past and present experiences. Strictly. So what our future holds is the vision that we have and the ideas that we have and what we want to achieve is actually created by any experiences, good, bad, or ugly, as in the past and in the present, because we make decisions based on, obviously, whether it's overcoming challenges or desires, or what we've been privy to, or what we've been whatever, like exposed to, anything, right? So if I have a desire to, I don't know, own a yacht, or live somewhere around the world, there's a reason why I want to do that. It's because either I've seen it, I touched it, I felt it, I wanted it, I believe in it. And so when he said, I've already lived it, and he said, everybody lives in this future tense, but really our future is designed by our past and present experiences. So technically, we've already lived our future. And I'm like, wow, that was powerful. And it came at a time because I met Mossab literally at the tail end of COVID. So here I am, prior to COVID, I have a while I'm alive list. So back in 2002, well before bucket list, I created a list of everything I wanted to do while I'm alive. I've set goals and targets for me every single year, personal, professional goals. I have a list of everything I want to accomplish with my family. I have, a business plan that's a 5-year plan. Like, I have been that guy. And after COVID disrupts our industry like no other. Couldn't predict it. Couldn't predict something of this magnitude that would disrupt our business. Realize that we have limited control of, things in life. And then at the same time, I have this interaction, and it was like, wow, and it taught me that being present, maximizing the present day, sounds cliche, but maximizing it, we are going to make decisions based on what comes in front of us, right? So I have this phenomenal interview today with Wes. We might be buddies after, we might connect, and we're going to make decisions after this call, and same with hopefully some of the listeners. But there's only so much we can control. And so when you ask me, like, what does my future hold? Well, I'm not going to, steal the line of well, I've already lived it. But what I am going to say is that, first off, I don't know. What do I envision, and what do I think my future holds? Well, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I didn't even tell my startup story. Like, at 21 years old, I took out a $450,000 loan So $500,000 and started my business. And I've been doing it for 20 years. And now I navigated the hardest thing in our industry. And I kind of want a break, to be honest with you. So I got 2 young kids, they're 6 and 8. We're coming out of this. We're picking up our bags where we left them. Way stronger, better, more efficient. We have an online and offline component. We're looking at expanding, physical locations, in the United States. But I think I got a window of 5 years to really leave like the ultimate legacy that I can leave in this industry. Because if I haven't done it the last 20 years, shit, I don't know if I can do much in the next 20. So I'm going to give myself 5 years to really leave a true stamp, a mark on this, so that hopefully I can be at a place where I can take a little bit of a breather and spend time with my kids. And I try to spend a lot of time with them, but I want to spend more.
Yeah. Well, that's, what you just described, is definitely visualization. People need to see, even though, like you said, it's like you can have all these goals and you can have everything, but it's pretty profound to say that you've already lived it, because you already know what's going to happen, because you have built that, you've built what's going to happen, and knowing how to navigate the hard times. That's everything that you've done before has prepared you to navigate that, and you
for sure.
That's awesome, man. I as you were talking, I was writing that down in my phone so that I could make sure I find that book, because I got to check that out. That's gold right there. So super cool,
Awesome.
man. So where can people, if they want to get in touch with you, I know I've interviewed a bunch of podcasters. I've interviewed a bunch of different people. If anyone wants to interview you or find you or follow you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I would say, email's the easiest, and I don't mind sharing it. So it's Curtis, CURTIS, at workout, WRKOUT. So just drop the first .com. But you can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on both of those. So LinkedIn, it's just Curtis Christopherson, and same with Instagram. So both of those, I'm pretty active on both the, direct messages as well as just overall like activity. Or you can email me. That's probably the easiest way.
Yeah, and I think that it'll be great to, I want to invite you back at some point, because I think it's a great story. I think it's very interesting for people to realize that, everything that you're doing is something that just takes drive. It takes vision. It takes knowing that you have, a little bit of confidence in yourself and being able to do something,
Yeah. I'll probably leave it on this, because I'm sure you're wrapping it up right now. I shared a little snapshot of how I started. So just for the listeners listening to the podcast, in life, if you want to get further ahead, you got to take a risk. You got to get uncomfortable, and being uncomfortable might be putting yourself in a position that you're not used to. It doesn't mean financial risk, but when you actually evaluate and assess the pros and cons, or worst case and best case, like chances are worst case isn't as bad as you think it is. Right. And at 18 years old, when I finished high school, I bought my first house. I was lucky enough to have scholarships, both academic and athletic. And then I was working full-time. I worked full-time. I worked 40 hours a week through university. And, I could qualify for a student loan at the time. And so what happened was I took a $10,000 student loan, and I said, okay, I don't need a student loan. I'm working full-time. I got full ride scholarship. So I'm going to take $10,000. I'm going to put a down payment of a house. I'm going to get 3 of my buddies to live in it while I live at home, and they can pay the mortgage, and I can, I can get the benefit of, home cooking and going to university and working hard. And I did that. I bought 2 houses by the time I was 21, and then I sold everything, like absolutely everything. I sold my houses. I sold my vehicle. Like I was a young 20-year-old, 21-year-old. I got the Jeep, it was lifted, and the wheels and the tires and all the, drive to the beaches in the summertime, and everybody loved it. And I sold it all, and I bought a $500 car to just so that I could commute back and forth to work. I remember it was moldy, and it was in an accident, and it was like it wasn't anything I was used to. And I gave up home ownership, which was tough, and I took a $450,000 loan to start my business. And I looked at it, I said, what is absolute worst case scenario? I said, worst case scenario, first off, I'm not personally guaranteeing it. But worst case scenario, even if I was, I'd work my ass off to somehow repay it. Like somehow I'd get a good paying job. I'd work my butt off and I'd find a long-term plan on how to repay it. And, 3 years later, I paid it off. And, that was the start of my business career. But you can't hit the finish line if you don't even start. So for me, it's I'm a big believer of it. Everything happens for a reason. Everything will work out to the best of its ability. And if you don't give up and you give your best effort in anything that you do, you're not going to live with any regrets. So, it's, we got one life to live. And once again, I don't want to be cliche, but, take the chances. Don't look back. If you're not uncomfortable right now, then, you're probably, I'd say sailing it in, like get uncomfortable, whether it's how you invest in the time, energy, and effort to learn, to grow, to develop. But also in business, if you want to embark on something, just go, have a plan, build a strategy, understand best case, worst case scenario, surround yourself with great people, fine tune your skills and abilities, read a ton, but take risk and just don't look back.
Oh man, that's all gold right there. I love that. That's I think the biggest thing is like it's with anything in life, and I always relate things to my current situation, but like getting uncomfortable and relating it to like your gym. It's like people who want to get in shape, they're not going to just take 5 steps and walk outside and do it one time and everything's going to happen. You have to get sore. You have to get uncomfortable. You have to be willing to push a little bit harder in order to get better at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, Curtis, man, I really appreciate it. It's an awesome conversation, and definitely want to have you back on some point. But thank you for telling us your story, man.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, everyone, that is the end of the show. Until next time, I want to challenge you to find the shape of your success.